There's no crying in fantasy. We are back with week 2. Sean, what's going on? How you doing?
Doing good. Ready for week 2. Week 1 was crazy. I'm ready to
Yes.
get down with that. Talk about week 1. Uh, so, so week 1. What's your overall perspective of week 1 so far? Heading into week 2.
I'll be completely honest. My thoughts coming out of week 1 is not to overreact because there are a lot of poor performances. And I think when looking at the overall landscape of how preseason has changed, how training camp has changed, a lot of these guys are not getting real reps in training camp and preseason. And you're seeing it in week 1. And you're going to see it for the next couple of weeks going into the season. So my focus right here is don't overreact, don't panic. If your studs didn't perform in week 1, don't try to go selling them for pennies on the dollar. Don't bench them just yet. Keep rolling them out and see how it goes. I mean, of course, the Bengals. I mean, that's a huge one for I think everybody. And you don't go sit in Jamar Chase next week or Joe Burrow or T Higgins. Although we have concerns about T Higgins. So
T hidden. That's what it should be called. T hidden.
So what are your thoughts?
Week 1, man, it was crazy. A lot of injuries. Big time day for wide receivers. A lot of wide receivers flashed out, which is what I would like to talk about week 1. And then no Aaron Rodgers. How's that affect the entire Jets offense fantasy wise going forward? That's something to talk about as well.
As a Garrett Wilson owner, I'm concerned.
Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, all of them, I believe. It affects them, it can affect them in a negative way or a positive way. But yeah, man, we get into these wide receivers, and I just wanted to go over, the two big dogs here, Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson. Tyreek Hill finished with, I believe, like 45 fantasy points PPR, 11 receptions, 215 yards on 15 targets, 2 touchdowns. And then you had Justin Jefferson finish with only 24 fantasy points, PPR, 9 receptions on 150 yards, 0 touchdowns. I brought them 2 up because I was like, those guys really went in. Justin Jefferson mostly in the first half. Some Kirk Cousins problems there. So if you had a pick between those two, who is your wide receiver 1 at the end of the year?
That's tough. I'm going to go with Tyreek with a full season of Tua. Going with Tyreek. And let me just clarify this. I'm going with Tyreek because, 1, I think the quarterback is better, and I think the offense is better. And 2, I think he has a better receiver opposite of him in Jalen Waddle that can take away some of the coverage that you may not get with Justin Jefferson just yet. Thielen's gone. You have a rookie who did flash this week, scored a touchdown, but we still have to remember that he's a rookie. So Justin Jefferson is going to get double teamed a lot.
Right, and honestly, I liked what I seen for Jordan Addison as a Jordan Addison owner. 16.1 fantasy points there for PPR, 4 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah.
He was targeted 6 times. So, I mean, once he gets more comfortable, maybe you have more of a situation like you do with Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Those two would just feed off each other. I do agree. Tua is a better quarterback right now. I mean, if y'all didn't watch that game, he was absolutely throwing dimes on the run, on the move. It was crazy to watch. I watched that game. It was an awesome game. Both sides going at it. So some other pair of wide receivers here, and we kind of spoke on this on the last show. We were trying to tell these people, pick up Puka Nacua.
My guy.
Our guy. We call
our
him.
Guy.
And then Tutu Atwell, man, he stepped up as well, man. Those
yes,
two.
He did.
Puka had 10 catches, 119 yards. Atwell, 6 catches for 119 yards. I mean, that is crazy. Puka had 15 targets.
Yeah.
So they play against San Francisco next week. You know, are you still feeding into those hype? Are you starting both of them guys, or are you just starting Puka?
And instantly goes into my lineup. I saw what I needed to see from Puka. Tutu did shock me. I would play Tutu, but I would play Tutu a little bit more cautiously. He had less targets. They didn't scheme for him as much. They were scheming for Puka. Like they were drawing up plays to get Puka the ball, and that's something that you want to see, especially with the Rams and with Sean McVay. I know a lot of guys criticize me because I said that he kind of looked like Cooper Kupp, and I think he really did kind of look like Cooper Kupp out there this weekend. You can't deny it. I know people pick him up off the waiver wire. I say throw him in your lineup right away. There are some concerns as to when Cooper Kupp comes back. Is he going to be as efficient? I don't think you can sit somebody who has made plays like that. And if he continues to make plays, I think he's going to be continually schemed into the offense. So I think he is a waiver wire gem. You pick him up, you put him in your lineup. I think you're good to go.
Right, he should be your number one waiver wire target. I already had 2 in my leagues. I was on it before it even happened. I couldn't get him in my third league. I couldn't bid that much. But
Him in 6.
he's got him in 6. I mean, we were on it. We were on it. We seen it coming from a mile away. I mean, I read reports as early as 2 months ago on Puka. I was like, this guy is starting to become a regular thing in camp, doing his thing. Cooper Kupp obviously taking his time, rehabbing with the injury, and I believe he's on IR, right? He can't come back to week 4. Is that true?
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, yeah, I agree. You put Puka right back in your starting lineup. I would probably bench Tutu this week because of the 49ers. If you have to start somebody, he's an okay flex option.
Yep.
So those are my thoughts on those two. And then
Oh, before we leave that game,
uh-huh.
Kyron Williams.
Well,
If
Kyron Williams and was somebody else, wasn't it? No, it's just Kyron Williams with the 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Kyron Williams had the 2 touchdowns. He had, I think, 15 carries.
Right, for 50 yards.
Starting to eat into Cam Akers' workload. So I would say if Kyron Williams is out there, you pick Kyron Williams up. I don't know if you play him right away, especially with San Francisco coming up, but just see how he continues to work into the offense.
Yeah, and they use it kind of in a way like, you would see the Chargers use Austin Eckler. He's a multi-purpose back, so he's going to play all downs pretty much. And I think maybe they use Cam Akers more of a short yardage back these days. If anything, that relationship keeps getting sourer and sourer. I don't know what's going on between Cam Akers, but I wouldn't start him against the 49ers, but he's definitely he's probably in the top 5 as waiver wire pickups right now.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Because you're looking at RB1 there. And I think this is a good transition into Kenneth Gainwell.
Yep.
Although he's already ruled out for week 2, which is a bummer because when I wrote these notes, I was like, this is a guy that definitely to target in your league. And he made a solid point in this game that he was RB1. And you saw Swift hardly played. Rashard Penny was a healthy scratch. I mean, and I believe Boston Scott still played, but not as much. But you look at him, maybe he gets healthy after week 2. He had 14 carries for 54 yards. He caught all 4 of his receptions for 20 yards. Is he a guy moving forward to trust in that Eagles backfield, or you're not touching him at all?
Cautiously. I wouldn't put him into my lineup right away, especially with the injury. This opens the door for Swift to show what he can really do in that offense. Also, Boston Scott, I think if Boston Scott is out there, I pick Boston Scott up in 2 leagues, especially like deeper leagues, like a 14-team league. I'm playing Boston Scott just because I think he's going to get a lot of touches. Rashad Penny just seems to be the odd man out in this backfield. It seems like the team doesn't really either trust him or they don't like him. But I think this really opens the door for DeAndre Swift to be a key part of that offense and Boston Scott to get some touches as well.
Right, and I think at the end of the day, I think you're going to see Boston Scott take a majority of the snaps at running back, just because he's more experienced in that offense, and you've seen him come in multiple times in multiple games, 3 years in a row now. So I mean, Swift, he's a hit or miss. We know the talent's there, but
Yep.
obviously, you know, there's something going on where he's not picking things up and he hasn't been able to retain success. So
But
I mean,
for this week, look at who they're playing, though. They're playing Minnesota.
mhm.
Um, Potential for a shootout because Minnesota does put up a lot of points. You may see Swift worked in a little bit more if it is an up-tempo game. He may play that game well role where you might not see as many carries from Boston Scott if they start to get down. So just take that into consideration as well as the opponent that they're playing this week.
Right. And so you look at some other wide receivers here. I was going to bring up Calvin Ridley and Brandon Ayuk had two similar breakout games here. Calvin Ridley, I think it's safe to say he's wide receiver one for Jacksonville, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah.
I think he's the favorite target there. And honestly, if you're looking to target somebody as far as trade wise and you need a wide receiver, maybe shoot your shot for Calvin Ridley because I think we're going to see that all year. I mean, he had 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. I forgot how many targets. I believe it was 8 targets. He caught all 8 targets. So I mean that's something to look at. Brandon Ayuk, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had 8 targets and 8 receptions. So, I mean, as far as Brandon Ayuk, does this downplay Debo Samuel at all? Are you starting to see Brandon Ayuk become Brock Purdy's favorite target instead of Debo Samuel?
I think he's Brock Purdy's favorite target, but it doesn't downplay Debo to me. I think Debo is still going to get his touches. He's still going to be working to the offense. If it hinders anybody, I think it's George Kittle. Um, George Kittle seems to be more of a blocking tight end right now. He's not as much of a factor in the passing game. I think Brandon Ayuk and Debo are the receivers in that offense that you want to target.
Right. And George Kittle, with the multiple injuries he has had over the past, 2 seasons, it's obvious that he's lost speed and he hasn't been able to retain his health like Travis Kelsey has been able to do over so many years. Now it looks like starting to finally catch up to Kelsey. He
Yep.
might play. We could get into that injury sections. Was there anything else you want to bring up for week one? Maybe Aaron Rodgers. We didn't bring up Aaron Rodgers. You know, what are we thinking is going to be the fantasy impact with no more Aaron Rodgers, like Garrett Wilson for one?
Well, I don't go and trade Garrett Wilson because everybody that's going to try to trade for him is going to like nickel and dime you to death. They're going to give you the 2-for-1s. So I would not trade Garrett Wilson. Hold on to him. I think Garrett Wilson still has a productive season. It's just not going to be the season that we thought or where you drafted him to be. Maybe he falls out of the wide receiver one contention and goes into a wide receiver two. Um, I think he still gets his targets. He's still going to get his catches. He's still going to get his yards. He's still going to get touchdowns. But it's not going to be at the pace that we thought it was going to be with Aaron Rodgers. That's the biggest drop off. I mean, I think the other wide receivers we weren't expecting much of. We weren't expecting much of the tight ends. If this elevates anybody, it's the running backs. It's Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook. You get them more involved in the pass game, and you get them more involved on the ground game to kind of take the exposure off of Zach Wilson right now.
For sure, and I think you will see. And I wasn't high on Brees Hall, but he certainly looked good. His first game, I
Looked
have
great.
Dalvin Cook. He did look great for coming off an ACL. He really did. I was impressed. And I had him as my number one running back coming out of his draft class before he got hurt. So I mean, the talent is there. I just didn't know how he would look off the ACL. Looks great, and Dalvin Cook helps relieve him. So I think that's be a good one. two punch there, and you're going to start to see the offense mold around Zach Wilson. You spent the entire offseason molding your offense around Aaron Rodgers. I'm interested to see how it plays out. I'm like you. You don't trade Garrett Wilson, even though you expected Garrett Wilson to be a top 5 wide receiver this year. You don't trade him. You wait it out, and you wait until about your trade deadline to make a decision, in my opinion, because it could go either way. I think as far as touchdowns, I think he's going to get most of the receiving touchdowns. So I think you still got that fantasy outlook on it. Now, is he going to get that much of yardage? That's the big question there. I don't think he's going to get as much yardage, and he might not get as near as many receptions because they're probably not going to pass that ball as much as they would have under Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's something you got to look at it. So Garrett Wilson right now is a wide receiver 2 flex option until we see how the offense performs under Zach Wilson. And let's say Zach Wilson doesn't perform and they get a quarterback, and let's say, I don't know, Jameis Winston. They trade for Jameis Winston. That could help Garrett Wilson's value there. So I don't know. We'll just hold on to him and we'll wait to see how it plays out.
Let me ask you a question. If somebody did try to trade for Garrett Wilson, what would it take for you to trade Garrett Wilson right now?
It would probably take maybe, a T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle in return, that type
I don't know
of
if I would do
value.
it for T. Higgins.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think they're on the same level. I still think T. Higgins is going to try to ball out this year. If there's no injuries amongst Joe Burrow and himself, he's still going to try to ball out because it's his contract year. So he might not be back with the Bengals, but he's going to have to make sure he puts in a good year if he wants
Yeah.
that top dollar wide receiver money. So, I mean, and obviously Garrett Wilson's value has dropped a little. So I think they're on the same level. I think if I'm getting that in return, it may be either a bench player, or if it's a dynasty league, maybe a draft pick. That's what
Okay.
I would give up or take in for Garrett Wilson.
There are 2 injuries I want to talk about before we move on. One person that did stand out to me was Jacoby Myers, who was not necessarily on my radar before week 1. But I think Jacoby had 11 targets, nine catches, 81 yards, 2 TDs. I know he's in concussion protocol right now, but he's somebody that I'm targeting because it seems like Jimmy G has some comfortability with Jacoby. And I think we're seeing the impact of Devontae Adams on that offense. Is they're going to do the short slant routes. It's going to be Jacoby in those positions. Devontae will get his touches, but he may not get into the end zone as much. The second one is one that isn't from a fantasy perspective, but it impacts a quarterback, and that's Deshaun Watson. Conklin from the offensive line is out, and that's a big loss for that offensive line. So I know Deshaun Watson is a mobile quarterback, but he's not as mobile as he used to be. So just kind of be aware of that if you have Deshaun Watson. Is they just lost one of their best offensive linemen, and there could be a lot of pressure on that offensive line right now. So just something to be aware of.
Right, and it could impact Nick Chubb as far as the run game.
That too.
Who's the replacement? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know yet, but I know Conklin is out for the year, and that's a big loss.
They might be in the tackle trade market. I'm not too sure who they can trade for. As far as Jacoby Myers, I actually picked him up in one of my leagues. I think I paid about $15 worth of bid money. I think we have a sub of 100 for the whole year.
Okay.
So I spent 15 on him, and I agree. Josh McDaniels bringing the Patriot Way offense to Las Vegas, and Jimmy G is already a veteran in that offense.
Yep.
So I'm not surprised that happened. I just, didn't care because of the name of Jacoby Myers, because obviously, coming from the Patriots last year were god awful offensively. So that kind of tarnished his name a little bit, even though I'm pretty sure he was one of the top wide receivers for that team for New England. Also, I mean, if he gets out of concussion protocol, you're already seeing some injuries with Devontae Adams. He did not practice today, by the way.
Okay.
So, I mean, if Jacoby can get out of that concussion protocol, he could be switched to wide receiver one target. So that's something to look at. If both of those two go down, Adams and Myers, I would be trying to pick up Hunter Renfro. He wasn't targeted at all last game, or I don't know if he even played. To be honest with
Yeah,
you,
he wasn't targeted.
yeah, I mean, it seemed like he didn't even play. But I would target him in your waiver wire. Trey Tucker, DeAndre Carter, some really wishy-washy names, but who else Jimmy G's going to throw to if those two go down? And who's their tight end? I forgot who their tight end was.
Myers and
Myers.
Hooper.
Austin Hooper, which he had a
Yeah.
catch for 20 yards. Uh, yeah, they mostly targeted Adams and Jacoby the whole game, and they didn't
Yep.
really give anybody much look. And we'll see how that plays out. I don't expect Las Vegas to really be in contention. I'm surprised they really pulled out a W in Denver. I figured Sean Payton might have want to win that game, but that didn't
I'm not
happen.
surprised. I'm not
You know,
surprised.
yeah. So some big time injuries here. J.K. Dobbins. I'm sorry, guys. RIP to J.K. Dobbins owners, especially in Dynasty. Unfortunately, I feel bad for the young man. It was like his third ACL, isn't it? That's crazy.
This is his Achilles. Yeah. I mean, it's like almost every year you expect it now.
Right, and that's why I always stayed off of him. I was not high. A lot of people were high off of him because of his rookie year, right? So I mean, you look at the guys that are replacing him as far on the Ravens: Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, and they brought Melvin Gordon up to practice squad. Uh,
Yep.
Justice Hill had the 2 touchdowns. Seemed like that was in the red zone. Gus Edwards took most of the carries, though. He had
Yep.
8 attempts for 32 yards. Out of those two, or Melvin Gordon, which one would you consider picking up out of those 3?
Depends on the league that I play in. I like Gus in a standard. I like Hill in a PPR league.
Hmm. Well, you know, I'll be honest with you. I probably wouldn't touch all 3 of them.
I would trust
you know,
Hill more outside of Gus just because I've seen it with Gus. Gus will get you 80 yards to 100 yards. That's 10 points. But
no
Hill is going to be the
touchdowns.
one. Hill's going to be the one that's going to be used in the passing game. I think
Right.
you're just going to get more production out of Hill from a fantasy perspective than Gus.
What I'm really hoping is for the Ravens to go ahead and trade for Jonathan Taylor because I have Jonathan Taylor in 2 of my leagues and he's sitting on the IR right now. So I'm hoping, that's the team he might go to there. Do you think the Ravens would be interested in Jonathan Taylor at all?
I don't think so.
Mm,
I just with Jonathan Taylor, he's looking for the contract. And it's like you already just extended Lamar. You gave him all that money. I just don't see them bringing Jonathan Taylor in. They have Gus. They know that Gus knows the offense. They have Hill. Hill's been there for 4 years. I think they're going to trust those guys until they prove that they can't do it. I think there's more teams that are in play for JT than Baltimore.
right. And in fantasy football, I think, you have to realize these teams have habits every single year. And they pretty much,
Yeah.
if it's the same coach, they pretty much do the same thing every year. And this running back carousel the Ravens has been going on for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And Lamar Jackson, the past 3 or 4 years, really took over the rushing department, and that's probably why they haven't really looked for a running back. But in this new offense, I think they are going to need a running back. Looking at other injuries, Deontay Johnson looks like he might be out for multiple weeks. Pat Fairmouth, he is questionable. Um, Austin Eckler did not practice today.
Yep.
He is questionable. I want to bring up Joshua Kelly. I think he should be number 2 on your waiver wire pickup. He had 16 carries, 91 yards, and a touchdown, 5.7 per carry. Uh,
Yep.
the Chargers have been wanting to get rid of Austin Eckler for a while now, and Austin Eckler has been so good they just can't get rid of him. But this injury, I believe I forgot what he injured. It was his ankle, wasn't it? Ankle.
Yeah, it was his ankle.
Do you see maybe Josh Kelly getting more carries and more snaps now? If Eckler goes out and Kelly has another good game, do you think Kelly might surpass Eckler, or
No,
they might split it more 50-50?
I think he eats into his workload a little bit more. I think the issue with Josh Kelly over the last couple of years was trust. They didn't have any trust in him. He couldn't get the yardage. He wasn't a good short yardage back. I think now you're seeing the maturity. This is what, year 3 for Josh Kelly.
Right.
If he starts playing well with Austin Eckler out, or him being injured and starting to, get a few more carries, you're going to see him work more into the offense as the year goes on to kind of spell Austin Eckler as they try to preserve him for the playoffs.
Right, and you still got Isaiah Spiller. They spent a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick not too long
Yep.
ago, but he hasn't really done anything to have a prominent role. And I believe they have a Eliza Dotson. I think that's his name. That's also on the depth chart. But I think Josh Kelly, man. I'm also trying to trade for him as well in my other league.
Okay.
So I'm gonna see how that works out, because I might go ahead and trade for Eckler too, and maybe see if I can get him at a low price. We'll see on that one. Aaron Jones, questionable. Uh, Patrick Taylor, AJ Dillon. Do you put any trust in those two if Aaron Jones was not to play this week?
Only AJ Dillon. That's it.
Really?
I think who do the Packers play this week? So the Packers are playing the Falcons.
Mm.
Um, I think they're going to be airing it out. It's a Romeo Dobbs. It's a Jaden Reed, possibly Christian Watson game. If Aaron Jones isn't there, AJ Dillon's going to get his work, but I just see them passing all over the Falcons.
That's understandable. Let's see. Greg, the tight end from the Broncos, he's going to be out for multiple weeks. That puts Adam Trotman into the starting tight end role.
Trotman is sneaky.
The
Trotman is
Trotman.
sneaky because he was with the Saints with Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
Dulcich was on his way out. They didn't like. I know Sean Payton didn't like Dulcich. He wasn't getting a lot of the work anyway in game 1. Trotman was getting targets, so I think Trotman is a good sneaky pickup if you need a tight end.
Yeah, he had 5 receptions for 34 yards, so that's not bad. I think maybe they might target him in the red zone too.
Yep.
I believe
And
they
he
struggle in the red zone.
And he blocks, so he's going to
He
be on
does
the
block
field
for sure. Let's see. DeAndre Hopkins didn't practice today.
I'm not worried.
I don't think you want to trust anything with the Titans right now, because I watched that game and Tannehill was just straight garbage, man. Like I just feel like I just feel like Malik Willis would make so much of a difference in that offense, and it just feels like Tannehill lost a step as far as his speed, because he needs to be very mobile. And I don't think he's very mobile these days.
I think Tannehill gets replaced, but hear me out on this.
Mm-hmm.
You're from New Orleans. You know how
Right.
the Superdome is. They're
Mm-hmm.
playing that defense. It was going to be tough. It was not going to be an easy game. And I think that pass rush got to him. He started going for his number one option, which was DeAndre Hopkins. He didn't get anybody else involved until maybe the 4th quarter of the game. I think this week you see a little bit more calmer approach to Tannehill. You see him making his reads. I think Burks, if he is on the field, I know he was out of practice today, but it was a personal reason. He should be back tomorrow. Burks is going to get some targets this week. I think this is kind of like it's not a squeaky wheel kind of week, but
He had like 2
they're going to try to
drops.
integrate the offense. Yeah, but I think they're going to try to integrate him more into the offense and try to move away a little bit from DeAndre. DeAndre's still going to get his targets as well. So I just think that was a game that they weren't going to win regardless. They're in the dome. You know how loud it gets in there. It's hard to play in the dome.
Right, and you know who I liked a lot watching that game? Tajay Spears, man. He
The
was in
targets.
on 54% of the time, which was more than Derrick Henry, by the way. He was getting all kinds of snaps. He was running the ball. He was receiving the ball. Tannehill missed him about 2-3 times when they got that mismatch on the linebacker a couple times. So he's a sneaky stash play for your waiver wire. Jalen Waddle, he was limited today in practice. If he wasn't to go, a guy that I would keep your eye on is River
Great
Clay
crowd.
Craft. Yeah. He had
Great
3
crowd.
receptions, 40 yards, and a touchdown, 5 targets.
You know
So,
who else was out today too? Mostert.
yep.
And A-Chain was practicing in full today. I know he was a healthy scratch, but keep an eye on Mostert. If Mostert is out, you may see A-Chain get the work this week, along with Ahmed. But Ahmed wasn't involved last week with Mostert being out there. So I think you're going to see Devin A-Chain get involved if Mostert is out.
Right. And I think that's all the injuries that I covered. I don't know if I missed any. Did I miss any injuries?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't see any. Um, yeah, I think you covered everything.
As far as waiver wire pickups, the only guy I didn't mention so far was this Roshan Johnson for the Bears. He got some action against the Packers. I kind of liked what I saw. It was kind of when they were, in garbage time in a little bit, but I did like what I see. And Herbert, I like Herbert, but you know, he doesn't look like he's a true RB1. He looked good when Montgomery was taking bulk of the carries as
Yeah.
far as rushing the ball, and Herbert was able to do, your dual purpose. Uh, Maybe let's see, we keep an eye on that. That's another stash off the waiver wire. Him and Tajay, could see some future opportunities there for sure.
I
Um,
I want to highlight a team that was really trash last week, the Giants. Um, I see a bounce back opportunity. They're playing the Cardinals this week.
at home
So
or at Arizona?
it's at Arizona, but I see a bounce back opportunity for some of your Giants players if you have them. Saquon, Isaiah Hodgins, I think he's going to have a bounce back opportunity. It was him and Paris Campbell out there to start the game. I think they're going to be the two leading receivers on that offense. So Daniel Jones as well. I think that this is a bounce back game for him. Like I said, don't overreact to week one. Um, you know, Giants aren't going to be great, but I think that there is some value, and this is a bounce back opportunity. So if you need somebody, I think Isaiah Hodgins or maybe Paris Campbell. They're going against a bad defense. Maybe try your luck there. Um, Two defenses I wanted to highlight, and it's in the same game, is the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Houston defense looked good last week against Baltimore. They're playing each other. I think it's two rookie quarterbacks. So if you need a defense this week, I say you can pick either one of them up, and you'll probably have some success.
For sure. And let's talk about the starts and sits. I think that's a good transition here, talking about who to start this week. So I don't know if you want to go first. Who's some of your starts this week? Who you got?
So I'm going all Bucks this week. I think Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White, they're playing the Bears at home. I say fire up all your Bucks this week if you have them on your roster. Those are some of my starts. Um, Other matchups that I'm targeting is Washington against Denver. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. I know they're in Denver, but I just feel like that's a pretty good matchup. Terry McLaurin's probably going to go against Pat Surtain, so Look for Jahan Dotson to get involved. Curtis Samuel as well, sneaky play. He had 11 PPR points last week, so if you need somebody in your flex, you can look there. And then the Saints against the Panthers. Olave, Rashid Shaheed, even Michael Thomas. He looked pretty good on this first week back. And Jamal Williams going against Panthers.
Yeah, I agree with the Jamal Williams. I got him on my starts. I know he struggled last week, but the run blocking was pretty bad. But you look at who the Titans had defensively, and it wasn't a surprise. Jeffrey Simmons wreaks havoc. But you're going against a younger Panthers defense, a Panthers defense that has had the Saints number over the year or so. But I think Doug Moreau, the offensive line coach for the Saints, is going to get these guys better in run blocking so we can establish the run. That's the one thing I feel like was missing against the Titans. So I think Jamal Williams is going to be a good play against the Panthers because you look at Atlanta, they absolutely ran all over him with Tyler Algier.
Yep.
So Deshaun Watson versus Pittsburgh, that's a guy I'm looking at as well with Amari Cooper, just based off Pittsburgh's performance versus San Francisco. Now, I know San Francisco is one of the top teams in the league, but they exposed that secondary, especially Patrick Peterson talking all that noise and really lost them the game before the game even started. I think you might see this in a similar fashion. They got momentum. They already beat one rival division team. I think they're going to beat another. Deshaun Watson, Amari Cooper, start them. And then this is the week that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go off, and he plays against Seattle. I believe it is at home. I think he flashed enough last week. I know they were just easing him in a little bit, but he flashed a lot to the point where I think they're going to use him almost every which way they can. I think they used Montgomery a lot more last week because, for one, it's week one, and there's no Chris Jones in the middle. So it was easier to run in between the tackles, get them, guaranteed 3 to 4 yards.
Yep.
My sits. I'm sitting Najee Harris again. Eventually, I think you might see Jalen Warren replace his spot. They're playing against Cleveland. Cleveland, another good defense. I don't think the Steelers are going to do well. Matthew Stafford versus San Francisco. Sit him. I don't know what they're going to do when rushing the ball, and I think it's going to be easier to cover the pass. I don't know. I almost put Tutu Atwell on here, but I didn't. I put Jalen Waddle, surprisingly, because he's living in practice. He's a little banged up. They play against New England at New England. I think this is a Tyreek Hill game all the way. I don't think Jalen Waddle, if he plays, is going to be the greatest. He might make you a couple plays here and there. We'll see. Playing at New England, they look good against Philly. That's all I get to say on that. Any Rams running back, do not play them. That's all I got to say on that. So no Akers, no Williams. Don't play him against the 49ers.
Yep. So my sits are Kenneth Walker going against the Lions. Not trusting Kenneth Walker this week. Also, Geno Smith going against the Lions. Who else did I have on here? James Conner going against the Giants. I'm not trusting James Conner this week. Although he got a lot of carries last week. If I had a good replacement, I'm sitting Garrett Wilson going against Trayvon Diggs this week in Dallas. I just think coming off of that win, losing Aaron Rodgers, going against that Cowboys defense, we see how good it is, and you have Zach Wilson at quarterback. If I have a comparable replacement, I'm sitting Garrett Wilson. Now, I know everybody doesn't have one, but he's on my sit list this week. And then For the Patriots, it's Ramondre. Um, I can't trust him right now. He didn't really show me a lot against the Eagles. He's going against another tough defense in Miami. Just it's not a good situation right now. I think better days are to come for Ramondre, so just be patient. But I'm sitting Ramondre, and those are my six.
For sure, and it seemed like Zeke got a lot of playing time too, and that's
In the
not a good
pass game
sign,
too. In the pass game,
right? And we've seen that coming. As soon as they signed Zeke, it hands off of Ramondre Stevenson. Um, but that's about it. I hope my Saints win Monday night against Carolina. We'll see how that goes. I think Bryce Young, you're talking about week one overreactions. Uh, Saints don't do well against rookie quarterbacks, and it's at Carolina week two. We don't normally do well week two. So I don't know. Maybe keep your eye on Bryce Young because he might shoot up this week, even though his wide receivers, they definitely need to give him some wide receiver talent. I don't know what they were thinking with
yeah.
this wide receiver room. I'm still on Mingo. I'm still on the Mingo train, but it may take a while for him to pop off. We'll see on that one.
Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst, he had him a good
That's
game.
one we
Yeah,
mentioned.
he's probably the number one tight end wire. And you got Hunter Henry. He also did pretty well. I would choose Hurst over Henry though for sure.
Yep.
But other than that, I'm ready for week two to start tomorrow. So
Ready for week two. My Eagles are gonna get the W at home. So there's no crying in fantasy. Week two, we are out. We are done. Sean, I will see you next week for week three. Everybody, best of luck on your matchups this week. And shout out to Hill for not loading our theme music this week. We need it back for next week. All right, everyone. See you later.
All right. See y'all later.